So good morning, everyone. Today, our group will be presenting the Pebble in the Pond model in instructional design model, introduced by David Merrill 2002. Before that, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Dede, and my friend.
My name is Niputo Alia Anjani, and my friend.
My name is Luftu Devi Kayana.
And my name is Maria Kanvita Saritela.
Okay, thank you. So next, we'll through the three main concepts in this presentation. The first is main concept, the second is advantage and disadvantage, and the third is possible use in the IDT context, especially in English language learning. So the first is according to David Merrill 2002, the Pebble and the Pond models begin with a real-world problem or task, which serve as the foundation for learning. This approach differs from traditional models, where often we start with a theory and definition. So according to David Merrill, this model offers a unique way of designing learning experience by starting from real-world problems and expanding instruction step by step, much like ripples from when you drop a pebble in the pond, like you drop a rock in the water, so the water will create a wave. That's the analogy for this method. So the next is the main concept. So the first is the problem. Learning begins with a meaningful text, not just theory. So we must start with a real world problem, not just theory, to get a main point for the problem. So the second is activation. The learners start with a simple examples, which gradually become more complex. So the next is the application. The students are active participant working to solve the language-related problem. So the next is the increased challenge. They receive a guidance. The instruction evolves outward, much like the revolves all the problem. So the next is the evaluation or feedback. They receive guidance and feedback as their skill develops time by time. So for the example, let's consider how this model works in English language learning. Imagine we are as a student in English foreign language class. Instead of starting with grammar rules or vocabulary lists, we present these real-world problems. We are exchange students need to introduce your school as international student in a video presentation. How we gonna do about that? So this is the real world problem we're gonna face. So we must face like students begin by writing a simple self-introduction about the school. And they can practice writing or they can practice speaking. So the next is they learn how to use descriptive language and present tense to describe their school. So the next is the lesson of the practice of pronunciation, grammar structure, and connecting idea comes into a paragraph. So the next is the student then receive a rehearse or for the presentation or practice for the presentation before the video take. And the last is finally the record of perform their speech and receive evaluation or feedback from their teacher. So that's an example for the Pebble in the Pond model. So thank you for my presentation, and the next is continued by my friend.
Okay, thank you, Dede. So now I want to explain about the advantages of a pebble in the pond. So for the first, it is problem-centered learning from Merrill, MD, 2009. And the Pebble in the pond model begins the design process by identifying a real problem that relevant to the learning context. And then this approach encourages deeper and more applied learning. And Pebble in Pond aims to make the learning process not just theoretical, but directly related to the real life. And then so learning starts with a real world problem or challenge. And then from which learners the concept, skills, and then knowledge needing to solve the problem. And then next, it is there is increase the relevance of learning. So it is from Merrill, MD, 2002. And then by starting from real world problems, these models ensures that learning is relevant to the needs and challenges faced by learners in a relevant context. So, as a learning starts from complex real problems, learners need to analyze the situation and then identify the relevant information and then consider different solution and make decisions based on their understanding. And then next, there is the encouraging the development of critical thinking skills from Merrill MD 2000 and 2007. So this is true because this model or because Pebble in the pond through a problem-based approach, and then the PIP models encourage learners to develop critical and then analytical thinking skills in solving a complex of problems. And then the next is increased student engagement from Merrill MD 2007. And this is by presenting real problems and problems as a starting point for learners. And this model increase students' engagement and motivation as they see the direct relevance between the material being learned and its practical application. So when students feel the subject of the material is directly related to the real world or their own lives, they will more interest in learning, and then they will more actively participate and more motivated to understand and complete their tasks. And then next, it is the last, encouraging active learning. It is from Merrill MD 2002. So PIP encourage students to be actively involved in their learning process through exploration, analysis, and then problem solving. So, which is ultimately improves comprehension and retention of the material. And then PIP encourages students to be actively involved in the learning process, meaning that students do not just sit and listen, but they are directly involved in the learning process. And then they are encouraged to explore problems and then analyze the information and then find their own solution to the real problems, and that can ultimately increase understanding and the ability to remember or retain material that has been learned in the learning process. And then that's all from me, and then next will be explained by my friends. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alia. So now I'd like to explain about the disadvantage of PIP or Pebble in the Pond instructional design model. So first is limited emphasis on learner analysis according to Merrill. So the advantage of this model is that it prioritizes problem solving over understanding the learners themselves. And the model assumes that presenting problem first will naturally engage learners, but it doesn't systematically assess learners' prior knowledge, motivation, or preferred learning styles. So without the analysis, instructor might design problems that are too easy or too difficult, leading to disengagement or frustration. For example, if a student lacks foundational knowledge, jumping straight into problem solving can be overwhelming, am I right? Is prioritized in instructional design according to Merrill. It means that this model isn't beginner friendly, so it demands strong instructional design skills to implement effectively. And for this pebble in the pond approach requires careful task analysis, sequencing, and a problem design, which can be complex for new designers. It can make novices might struggle with breaking down problems into teachable and the components are ensuring logical progressions. And without proper training, the instruction may become disorganized or ineffective. Again, the third is less flexible for non-problem based learning, according to Allen. While great problem solving, this model isn't ideal actually for all types of content. So the subject is like history dates or vocabulary or pure theory don't always fit uh, a problem-centered approach. So forcing such content into this model can make a lesson feel unnatural. And the fourth is time-consuming development process, according to Merrill. So designing with this model can be slow because it starts with real-world problems before building instructions. So unlike traditional models, Pebble in the Pond requires instructors to first develop authentic problems and then deconstruct them, adding extra steps, and this make it less efficient for quick course development, especially in fast-paced environment. And with small adjustment to problems may require reworking entire lesson sequence. And the last but not least is potential of simplification of complex learning, according to Jonathan. So the structured problem-solving approach may offer simply in one subject. Some topics like, for example, creative arts benefit from open-ended exploration rather than rigid problem solution frameworks. So the model, step-by-step nature might limit critical thinking by pushing learners toward predefined solution. Okay, that's all about my material, and the next material will be explained by my friend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the time. So now I would like to explain about the possible use in the ID context of Pebble in the Pond. So an application in instructional design context, the Pebble in the Pond is model is particularly effective in contexts where the problem-based learning is a priority size. Some potential applications in that related in instructional design context is include the first one is task-centered training. In the task-centered training, it's meant like designing a training program for technical skill of professional development where the learners need to solve complex with the real world problems. For the example is a Microsoft Excel course. This meant like the learners begin with real world tasks such as redesign a budget worksheets to calculate. Learner begin with the real tasks such as redesigns a budget with department expenses, and then the latter tax is increased in the complexity, like such as analyzing quarterly sales data and forecasting annual trends. And then the next one is digital learning environment. And a digital environment, it's meant like the creating an interactive learning models that can guide the learners through progressively challenging tasks. For the example is make a learning model for software training. A cybersecurity course present learners with a simulate phishing attack. They must identify red flag, coordinate threats, and report incidents. Each scenario can build on previous knowledge with feedback to correct errors. And then the next one is higher educations. It's meant like the structuring course around authentic problems rather than information heavy lecture to instead student engagement and application of knowledge. For the example is medical school curriculum. Students begin with a patient case study, for the example diagnosis diabetes, before receiving formal instruction. They research symptoms, process treatment, purpose of the treatments, and then compare their solutions to expert workflows. And then the last one is next, please. Okay, the last one is skill integrations. And a skill integration mean like developing instructional strategy that align component skill with text to ensure learners can apply their knowledge effectively across various scenarios. And then for the example is customer service training. A telecom company trains staff to handle irate customer or angry customer. The Pebble text involved the escalating a complaint about billing errors. Subtext include active listening, empathy forming, and solution brainstorming. Okay, that's all about my material. So the time I give back for the moderator. Thank you.
So thank you guys, friend, for the great presentation. So that's all for our presentation, and see you in the next meeting. Bye bye.